Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Podcast Assemble, the show where we talk about all of our geeky interests. We talk about movies, TV shows, comic books, and video games. My name's Tommy, and I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by my friend and co-host from across the pond, Drey. How are you, mate?
Hey. I'm doing well. How are you, Tommy?
Well, that's a weird way.
Hey. What is that from?
Everything all right with that?
Have you heard? It's from something.
I don't know.
It's from like Fat Charles or something. It's some like old, like Dr. Doolittle style comedy. Eddie
Never
Murphy.
heard that in my entire life.
Hey. Sorry.
I appreciate it. No, keep it going. Maybe you can talk about the whole episode.
Yeah.
That exact accent.
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It was
Not
good.
too hungover? I'm surprised.
No, well, last night. It was like a sauna again in the apartment, so just steaming.
You probably sweated out the alcohol.
Sweated all out, and then I was ready to go for the day.
But so for anyone who doesn't know, yesterday, in recording time, yesterday for us was Australia Day, and that means pretty much everyone here just gets absolutely hammered.
Yeah, it's like the 4th of July for Australia.
Yeah, well,
except like
it's very problematic over here, so we won't go too far into it.
4th of July's got the same kind of thing.
That's very
at a more
true.
massive scale, but
anyway, we got political so early in this episode.
That was
we usually steer clear of it pretty well, but
we did our worst there.
Steered directly into it. What have you been up to, buddy?
Yeah, other than drinking on Australia Day, well, I haven't done. I watched WandaVision. Like I said, I promised I would.
1, 2, 3.
I did. I watched all 3. Promised I would. I executed.
Wonder Watch. What do you think?
Wanda Watch. Look, I mean, apparently the budget for this was like $225 million. I sent you that meme. I don't know if it's actually true. I just take memes as
that's where I get all my news,
right? Like, it's like one up from Facebook.
That's why our political content's so off the wall.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
what do you think? Like, I mean,
so I'm waiting for it to get crazier because if it's got that kind of budget, surely it will.
Well, what we said
so far, it's been like, how would they have spent even $1 million?
I mean, well, what we said last week was we're going to wait, probably on the prosthetics for Paul Bettany's face.
Yeah.
What we said last week was we're going to wait till it's finished and do like a proper episode on it, deep dive it. I think this is one that you're going to watch back and go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't notice that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of hints and weird things, but I don't even know if there's like a crazy amount of foreshadowing. I think that like the fan theories are going to be right. Like she's just gone super nuts.
I have got so many fan theories.
Yeah,
so I've actually made a bit of a mistake today, actually. Right? So I called out comicbook.com on the last week's podcast as a thing that I actually pay a lot of attention to. They've usually got really good sources, and they've annoyingly just started a podcast as well. They're only 2 episodes deep, though. We're 14. We're doing all right. Is it 14 or 13?
I think it's Actually, last week would have been 13, I think. I can look.
I don't know. We're doing all right, though. We're doing all right, considering.
Yeah, we'll get it on YouTube, get the algorithms in our favor.
We'll get all these things. We're working on all these things. Pod_assemble on Twitter. That's what you need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I started to listen to their very first podcast, and they were saying no spoilers, but oh my God, they like some of it, because apparently the main dude, forgotten his name, BD, he calls himself, is
DL now,
is fairly close to like the Marvel stuff. So like he's on set on some of the movies. And the first episode has an interview with Kevin Feige, so he's obviously pretty goddamn close.
Oh, so he got on the podcast.
Yeah, they did like a clip of it on the podcast.
Wow.
I actually turned it off before that because I was like, I already feel like I've had a lot spoiled for me because they've already seen an episode ahead basically, so they're always an episode ahead. And I'm a bit like, some of the things I was listening to, maybe I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
So I stopped. I just turned it off. I was like, I don't care. I want to wait and see for myself.
Look, I think I'll be honest. Like I watched them. I was entertained to a degree. I was a bit bored at times as well because it's like super.
Okay.
They've nailed that sitcom humor, and it's funny that they've nailed it in a way that's like in the MCU and jokes about powers and that kind of stuff. Like they've actually done really well with that.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't care for that show, like that kind of those kind of shows. I didn't watch I Love Lucy.
Well,
I don't really give a fuck. Yeah. like they've done something really well that I'm not mentioning. Yeah, of course. So it'll expand hopefully, and we obviously got like the first hints of that.
Yeah.
At the end of the last episode.
Well, one thing that they were talking about that was interesting on this other podcast that I'm not going to name. I'm not going to give other podcast shout outs on our podcast. Why would I do that? They actually were talking about the first 2 episodes being released together, and I found that really interesting when they were talking. They were basically saying that it must have been a market testing thing, because if you can imagine it, just put that first episode out, I would have been like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I think because they put the first 2 out back to back, and it sort of teased you into it a little bit and gave you a little bit more of the feel of it over 2 episodes.
Yeah.
it's building up to being absolutely crazy apparently, and
it's gonna be like a seismic tone shift though. I mean, they're doing a really good job of like randomly, intermittently, like giving you this like weird like anxious feeling.
Yeah,
as
crazy
things like don't go right.
Like,
so they're doing that more and more, but there's no matter which way you split it. If this becomes like a typical MCU thing where there's all this crazy action all of a sudden, it's going to be a big tone shift.
Yeah, well,
it's going to be
apparently building up to being crazy. There's been a lot of hints that it's going to be nuts.
So I've been watching that.
Well, what are your very initial thoughts on what might happen?
Well, they're obviously trying to contain some kind of repercussion of the post-Endgame stuff. Like where Vision's dead, something's caused her to totally like go into some kind of mental state where she projects and it almost feels like she's creating things with her own consciousness.
Well, she's already reversed time twice.
Yeah, and we've seen her do that, and then we've seen her in the like WandaVision show kind of be able to create things, which I don't remember that being a part of her powers. Was it?
In the comics, very much so.
Yeah, but so far in the MCU,
no,
it hasn't. So,
but if she's losing, if she is that powerful, she doesn't know it, and she's losing control of it, then no wonder
so they're trying to
happening.
Contain it in that weird, crazy field, and maybe there was crazy implications that have already happened where we don't know what those are yet, but we're now seeing the aftermath of it being contained and trying to bring her out.
Well, one theory I read was that it's actually it's to do with Vision's body.
Yeah.
So like they don't mention where Vision's body is after Infinity War. Like nothing said about it, and that's some seriously like that's expensive shit. Like that's Stark tech. It's obviously vibranium. Like that doesn't go cheap. And if someone's trying to hack it or whatever,
like I don't really remember Age of Ultron, even though I just recently saw it. Like wasn't they created it and it's vibranium and all this stuff, but like the Soul Stone, which one was it?
Yeah, the Soul Stone
was
the Mind Stone, right? It's a Mind Stone because Loki used it to
anyway.
Put
point being, that was what powered it up
and
and made it really crazy, right? Before it was just like this cool tech mixed with what's his name, Jarvis. Yeah. So like, I mean, it's important. You're right. But at the end of the day, like the big thing is already destroyed. The thing that was like really powering it.
But
so I wonder
that was the point of the end of Infinity War when they were trying to get the stone out, but maintain his mind, his memories, his sort of soul, if you want to say. That was the whole point of that. We're going way too far off topic here, but anyway. Like initially excited to see what happens, not excited, kind of bored.
I mean, like I'm more intrigued than I thought I'd be, but I'm still, I mean, I'm happy that it's on Disney Plus.
If this was a movie and you're a third way through of it, would you say initially you think it's better or worse than Aquaman 2018?
It's too hard to say now. It's too
you're
hard
a third of the way through. But just make a.
Are we really a third of the way?
Assumption.
But I think this is like totally. We're at the end of the intro. You know what I mean? But I'll say that it seems more well thought out.
We've already had twins.
It's more well thought out. Like I'm intrigued to see where it's going, and I feel like it will be more.
Fair.
Like it will be like it will have an arc. There will be things that were planned.
Yeah,
as opposed to like
I'm super excited to see where
like the ending's not going to lag on. It's going to be like a true climax. It's not going to be like fucking Wonder Woman, or it just kept going and like you lost interest. Like it's building intrigue and interest, which is good.
So you watched that. What else have you been up to this last week? Then you must have been up to other things.
Yeah,
you must have done things and stuff.
I did stuff.
You've been playing Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, we've been playing that. It's a really good game.
You obviously know this, but I played Breath of the Wild with Drey a little bit last week. We played like 15 minutes max, and I was so like into it in those 15 minutes that I've gone and bought myself a goddamn Switch to play this game.
It's really cool,
and I'm just like, how has this happened?
Yeah, it's really cool.
I mean, like drawn into it.
You'll love it, dude. The only thing I would criticize it on is there's like limited voice acting, which kind of gets annoying. Just to hit A through all the dialogue. I don't want to read it. It's not that engaging.
Well, conversely, I've been playing a little bit of that Last Remnant game that I've told you about, and I've not had a lot of time to play it. To be honest with you, super busy with work and stuff. But I played a little bit of it, and everything in that is voice acted. And it's because it's Little Hole, it's 2008. Yeah. It's really fucking annoying.
It's like,
there are points where you're just like, some of this dialogue doesn't even make sense. Like, why are you even saying this? Like,
I mean, like, there's two sides to every coin, but it's because every part of the game is so well executed on the other side. But then on the other side of the coin is like, I get it. They're trying to like maintain that classic Nintendo feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the cell shaded style of it.
It's super cool.
It's like beautiful. The art is beautiful. Like the story's meant to be super intense and deep.
The story's good. I mean, it's like the same story always with Zelda, but like you're more engaged because there's like it's more like
there's a bunch of cool fan theories about Zelda that it's all technically the same story, and it's different generations.
So I tried
passing the story on.
Yeah, I tried to like understand the
lore of Zelda.
It's absurd.
Yeah, it's mad.
So there's like a 20-minute video on it, and I was just like more confused.
I've watched things in the past, and it's way too much.
And I just gave up. But the combat is so fun.
All right.
The like just exploring is fun. You feel super empowered to get anywhere. It's just like really fun. It's like it's like Red Dead, but more accessible to the average gamer because it's not so slow. And
nice.
You feel more empowered to get where you want to go, do what you want to do.
Because it's one of those games that you can finish not as soon as you start, but essentially you can, if you are good enough, you can go off and fight the final boss pretty much as soon as it lets you out.
You'd be able to go do it. I honestly don't know if people can. I'm sure somebody on YouTube.
I'm sure there's a speedrun on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm down to Google that once I've actually beaten it. I don't want to like have it spoiled, but I'm sure someone's tried. But to do that with 3 hearts, bro, you basically just can't get hit.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be like super into the combat, perfect, right? Yeah. I mean, well, the other thing I've been doing this week, haven't been doing yet. Actually, I did this ages ago. I just forgot to tell you. I bought the original 2 Arkham games, so Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Yep. I bought them ages ago, and I'm waiting for them to arrive. I'm like, wait with bated breath. I'm like so excited because I mean, my brother played these games years ago. And was giving me all the love about them, telling me how great they are and how much I had to play them.
Well reviewed.
Well, a lot of the combat from Spider-Man essentially hails from this. Like that's essentially the sort of background for it.
Yeah,
it would appear. Like I'm not saying
the same developer.
I don't think so. Probably should know this,
but inspired by. Fair enough.
I would like to. I would say it's probably inspired by from what I've seen. Anyway. Well, anyway. This week, have you seen all the big announcements, including that Black Widow is going to be delayed again?
I did not see that.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. I mean, this is reported all over the web.
Well, like everything got delayed, though.
Everything
we talked about 2 weeks ago.
I was going to go through this and say the things that got delayed, but I deleted a bunch because, like, a lot got delayed.
We can just say everything. Like
everything. Well, I mean, I think the big one really is Black Widow in this case. I mean, partly for our main topic for this conversation today. But also, because it's going to push back
everything,
all the movies. Does that also mean that it's going to push back the TV shows that are supposed to come out? I mean, probably Loki doesn't matter for, but things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
So many things rely on each other in the MCU.
That's what I'm saying.
It's good, and so you're right. They're just going to be sitting on all this content.
Well, they've said this week that the new Disney movie, I've completely forgotten. It's something about a dragon. It's broken my head. I was reading about this just a minute ago. That's been going to be put on to Disney Plus, but at like a premium price, so at $30 again. Mm-hmm. So it's one of these things whereby do they put it on there for $30 and just hope that people watch it? Is this going to be another test to see whether it's worth putting Black Widow on there? It's like, they can't push it back that much longer, otherwise they can't release other stuff.
Dude, I'm sure they're like plugged into their like Snowflake machine learning
algorithms.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And absolutely, that's actually like probably the primary use case for those guys is like testing that kind of stuff across different mediums. It's interesting. They're gonna have like a crazy, they're gonna have to debate between 2 revenues, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Because they have like the traditional TV model, and it's like all these different arms of the octopus, and how do they all enable each other? I don't know. It's interesting debate for them.
It's like Hydra.
Yeah, but I'm excited to like have more shit on Disney Plus eventually.
It'll
all end up there. So
yeah, at some point it will. Yeah. Well, did you hear this week that IGN are reporting that Jurassic World Domain, the upcoming end of the trilogy for the Jurassic Worlds, is going to be a culmination of all 6 films in the Jurassic Park franchise?
Yeah, I mean, retcon. I think
I know culminations. It's going to bring everything together. It's going to be like a big old like celebration.
The only way they could do that effectively is with some retcon. I feel like.
I don't know. Well, in the last one, I think all the dinosaurs ended up getting out into the wild.
And so now it's like the lost.
Yeah, like.
When did that happen?
I think they did that in the 3rd one. In
the 3rd one, we saw the pterodactyls flying away. That was it. But now there's like a lot in the wild.
I think in the 3rd one, I think you saw the dinosaurs make it onto land. I can't honestly fucking remember.
Also in the 2nd one, they brought the T-Rex, but they got it back. They take it back, and anyway,
they take it back. Come on, T-Rex, come with me.
I'll watch it because Jurassic Park is Jurassic Park. It's kind of like an iconic.
Well, here's one you'll love, and I'm pretty sure you will have seen this week because IGN was just going crazy this week. Did you hear that HBO are developing another prequel to Game of Thrones?
We just talked about. Oh, Game of Thrones.
Another prequel to Game of Thrones.
So I thought you were going to say the other one.
No,
the one we just talked about last week about potentially redoing Harry Potter, which we can get to that next.
We will talk about it in a moment. But this is apparently based on the tales of Dunk and Egg. Now, I don't know a huge amount about this, but I do know that George R. R. Martin was very thorough in saying that this is one thing I do not want to be made into a TV show.
Well, I think he actually said, I don't want it made into a TV show until I finish them. Because he's got like 3 or 4 more.
Interesting.
And
Dunk and Egg tales.
Yeah, that he's planned to like write. I've read
he doesn't want people butchering it like they did his actual work.
I mean, I don't know if he said that before or after season 8, but
I'm guessing probably around that time.
I did see that. I also saw something saying they're thinking about doing a prequel that covers Robert's Rebellion.
Yeah, I've read that as well.
I don't really care to see because that's so integrated into the original story.
It needs to be.
That is a part of the original.
Yeah, that's a huge
like
part
Song
of
of Ice and Fire story. Like it shouldn't be separate because it's revealed as it needs to be to show you like what you need to know when you need to know it.
Absolutely. By the way, everyone, this could be a news episode alone. Like we could riff on this all night. Like there's so much news that's come out. You just mentioned a moment ago Harry Potter. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that?
That's crazy. That there's like no details on it at all.
Yeah.
It's like an unnamed Harry Potter project.
Very early development.
They're like they have writers just spitballing. Who knows what it'll be? Will it be a part of like Harry Potter world or like the Wizarding world?
This was announced by the Hollywood Reporter, which is usually a really good source.
Oh, I'm sure they're
so if
doing
those conversations are happening.
So like, here's what I'd want it to be.
Oh yeah.
Here's what it won't be.
Okay.
I'd be down for them to just redo it and every book is a season.
Could do.
I would be down for that.
I'd watch that. Like exactly how we discussed it last week.
What we talked about, that would be awesome. Like you'd be doing the books justice. You'd be doing all the characters justice. Yeah. It'd be sweet. That's what they should do. They won't do that. They'll do some other thing, a part of like the, Fantastic Beasts world or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Down the line, though, I hope they do that.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's loosely tied to the video game they're bringing out. Because they're bringing out the RPG video
like the
game.
1800s or whatever.
Yeah, like it's just hundreds of years before the main actual thing. It's just based in that world and it's around different characters, different heroes. That'd be pretty cool.
It'd be cool, but it's like, how do you get, like, the writers have to be ace. Like, Harry Potter doesn't have that much, like...
Oh, it's got so much lore she's made up.
It's got so much lore, but like...
She's absolutely made up.
But she hasn't, like...
Did you know the one about wizards used to just shit themselves and then they would just magic it away?
That can't be true.
She literally...
She did not say that.
Look it up.
What, back in like the way caveman days?
No, in like the Merlin times.
Anyway, she's come under a lot of fire recently. Actually, I don't know if you've seen that.
She's not having a great time right now. Look, there's so much news. Let me tell you a couple more just while we're riffing away. So one that I think we actually talked about a little bit last week was that apparently Christopher Nolan reportedly has no interest in working with Warner Brothers anymore, following their HBO Max announcements for all their movies, which is kind of brutal because he's a bit of a tentpole for them. Like, they've kind of let him do his own thing.
Like, surely they let him put his movie in a theater. Why? What's he on about?
I don't.
What, is he just mad that the studios are doing what's modern?
I think it's just that he's mad that they've gone behind everyone's backs and just like
he doesn't want to.
He feels stabbed in the back.
He doesn't want to support a studio that's gonna go straight to streaming. Well, dude, there's every studio that's any studio is gonna be doing that. I guess you could go work with indie people who then license it out. But
maybe he'll retire. I mean, who knows?
I hope not. Actually, sorry, Chris doesn't.
Well, there's some pretty fun stuff coming up here. Then, did you hear this week that Matt Damon has joined the cast of Thor: Love and Thunder? Now, this is interesting because he was actually in Thor Ragnarok playing. So you know in Thor Ragnarok.
Hey, dude.
No. You know in Thor Ragnarok when Loki is pretending to be Odin.
Yes. And
Thor comes back and he's doing a play of his death. Yeah. That's Matt Damon playing Loki in the play.
Really?
So he is literally.
I'm looking this up.
You wanna take a second to just look that up?
No, go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah, well,
I just want to see what it looks like. I didn't notice that.
Well, you wouldn't expect they'd pay all that money to get Matt Damon in for another tiny cameo.
Yeah, what happened
that's stupid. Like, he must be having a bigger part in this, surely.
I mean, maybe he was just maybe it's like a joke. Maybe you just know someone that want to come in and do it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think about all he'd have to do to get over here, like quarantining for 14 days. Fuck that, man. That's so much effort.
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene?
I do remember the scene, but I don't remember.
It's the scene where he's dying.
Oh my god, it is him.
It is him,
and you can totally tell having now seen it.
Yeah, look,
that's hilarious.
There you go.
Yeah, that's hilarious. How did I not catch that? But I remember it was quite funny, that scene.
It was hilarious.
Yeah. Other news, there's Knights of the Old Republic rumor that they're going to make a new game for Star Wars, which is the one we talked about a few episodes back.
Didn't hear that. Speaking of games, did you hear that Resident Evil: The Village was announced?
Yeah, well, it was it had already been announced. But they put out a bunch of gameplay. To be honest,
proper trailer.
so Resident Evil does this weird thing where they have like they just retcon everything and they like remake remakes like and remakes. And so the new ones,
Inception.
Yeah, remakeception. The new ones they've been doing, like
Rebootuations.
Rebootuation of like, whatever. I don't even know how you call that when it's a remake of a video game, but the 7 and 8. So Village is 7 or Village is 8.
I think it's 7. Yeah.
Either way, the last 2 that they've done, like that were numbered in the series that were taking it forward, were first person survival horror, which is not its traditional like. It's not where it came from.
Yep.
And it's like completely separate story. Honestly, it shouldn't even be called the Resident Evil game. It should be like some kind of spin-off.
Okay.
But they keep calling them. So I'm not really as excited. I didn't play the one before that. I don't really like the first-person vibe. Right. It looks amazing.
Did you ever play PT?
Which one's that now?
So PT is it's our old favorite, Guillermo del Toro. So he created a playable trailer for a Resident Evil game that he was going to make, and it was put on the PlayStation Store. It was on there for like a few weeks, and then it got pulled. I've got no idea. I can't remember the story, but it got pulled, and it's like so sought after this playable demo. It looks like the best thing you've ever seen. Like if you think about all the Guillermo del Toro stuff, like how fucking crazy like his like visuals are. He has the horror down to a T. Yeah. I think it might even have the dude who does Metal Gear Solid Kojima in there as well, from memory. But like you can buy PlayStation 4s with that playable demo for like thousands of dollars. Right. It's ridiculous.
Look, I mean, like the game looked great. They're taking it in a new direction.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll play it. Maybe I will. What I do like is that like what they do, Capcom, because they do these remakes. Now they're remaking their old ones to service both audiences, the people that like the new ones, and then the people that like the third person view ones.
Oh, okay.
They're remaking those ones. So those are the ones I've been playing.
Okay, interesting.
And they're gonna remake Resident Evil 4.
That's cool.
And they're gonna use like it's also gonna kind of set in a village part of the game. So obviously they're just like reusing some of the content, and like they've done this a bunch in the past. So I'm pretty excited for that. It'll be awesome.
This is so funny, by the way. So for listeners to the show, like we've had really dodgy microphone stands the entire time, and Drey's actually quite vocal with his hand gestures. Yeah, like he's just like he's really excited.
I almost had to like spike down the mic. Yeah. Tommy's probably tripping like he's gonna spike the mic.
It's hilarious. All right. Couple more from me. Did you hear that the Lord of the Rings game Gollum is coming out, but it's also been delayed till 2022? It's been delayed.
I also didn't even know there was a game, but it's...
Me neither. It looks crap.
It doesn't look that good.
It looks dire.
But it will be really... Like, the concept is interesting. It's like Prince of Persia meets, like, Splinter Cell stealth mechanics. And I was like, in a Lord of the Rings game? Like,
how do you play a game where you know the main character's going to die?
I mean, I think that's less of an issue as like, how do you play a game where there's, like, so little combat, you're just sneaking around the whole time?
Okay.
Like, I'd be bored eventually. But, like, this is probably not marketed to, like, the normal person. It's just probably, like, big Lord of the Rings fans will buy it.
Yeah, but it's still going to make money. Like, you're not just going to make a game for a niche audience. Like,
well, I mean, maybe it doesn't cost that much. It's just, like, a stealth game. How crazy could the mechanics be? I don't
know, actually. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe I saw that, and I was like, I'll never play it. But it is Lord of the Rings, so I'll talk about it.
I did see the trailer, and the graphics of Gollum look significantly worse than the movie Gollum, which was
I noticed that too. I was like, is this on like the Switch or something?
Yeah, what the hell is this being played on? Like this is.
And then it was like, no, Xbox, PlayStation, all the big ones.
Yeah, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
All right, last two from me then. Did you hear this week that they have announced a prequel to The Witcher?
Yes.
Which is coming out on Netflix.
You sent that to me.
Which is
I should play along. Yes, I did not hear about it. No, you sent that to me and we talked about it. And I'm just my initial take was like, fuck man, another
like what?
Prequel. Like this series is deliberately trying to confuse everyone. Like what are they doing? Like why? And then I was like, my second take was like, actually, like this will kind of help. They still fucked up the original one with a different timeline. They didn't need to do that, I don't think. But they could have just done it more simply and just done everything in order and just done slower releases and had like a smaller season or something. But my second take was this will actually help. Like, I don't know how you do this any other way. Either you do it the way where like really, really professional shows that like are really well written do it, where you find out about all the lore and the previous history kind of as you're going through the show, the way Game of Thrones did. This is a movie. Yeah. So like you either do it like the way Game of Thrones did, where you hear about like Robert's Rebellion and certain parts of it as the show's going on and it builds the lore and you don't know everything and they reveal things as you're supposed to learn them to like surprise you and subvert your expectations, right?
Because the first season did not do that very well.
Of what?
The Witcher.
No, so my point is maybe they're just not up to the task, right? And so they're going to do it more like the MCU way, which is like nothing wrong with it, where they just do a bunch of content that shows you the prequels, and the people that really care will learn more about it, watch that, and then understand more about the core world.
Well, let's get Benioff and Weiss in from Game of Thrones. Let's bring them back to ruin something else we love.
No, please don't. But I actually thought, all right, fair enough. And this is actually going to help people understand it a lot more. Basically, it's like goes through like what they call the conjunction of spheres in the world, and that's like when monsters were created, which is why Witchers were needed to be created, which is like, and then like thousands of years later, you have the world that Geralt's in. You're going to see how that happened.
So Witchers were created then?
Yes. Witchers are like they're basically
by
mutant humans,
okay,
by elves to go kill monsters because they have all these extra.
By elves,
yeah, and the elves. This is going to tell the story of all the elves and how they actually eventually humans take over.
Yeah, because I knew that
persecute them.
I knew elves had been.
Yeah, so this is going to tell the story of like how they went before the fall, really.
Okay,
how it happens.
How interesting.
Yeah,
there you go. Well, there are some interesting things in that thing we absolutely wrote off a second ago. But is there anything else you saw that I hadn't seen?
Nothing crazy other than like the guy that played Green Goblin apparently won't be returning.
I was going to
say which I never saw.
This is my favorite bit of news all week, by the way. The fact that someone has actually come out and said they're not going to be in this fucking movie. It's apparently got the entire
every single one, and they're like, he's like, I feel left out.
Dane DeHaan was just like, I don't want to be part of this. Like
no, I think he wanted to. He said, no, I would have liked to be, but I don't know how they do it. That was basically a code word for me. Like, so they didn't want to. You weren't invited to the party.
To be honest, man, his character was worse than goddamn blue Jamie Foxx. Like, it was so bad.
And he doesn't have the, the acting chops and history of Jamie Foxx. Probably
he wasn't great.
So they don't give him the benefit of the doubt to be returning. Anyway, that's all for news.
Yeah, I think, well, that's everything I heard this week anyway. Like, I quite enjoyed this week's news. There was so much, like, I honestly could have riffed about that for so much longer.
Same. So, Tommy, main topic theme.
Yeah, main topic
I beat you to it this
You
time.
did.
Fucker.
You didn't beat me to the intro, so it's all good.
That's fair.
Well, last week we actually had a couple of messages from a couple of people, including friend of the show, Steve, one of our favorites, who messaged in and said they would like us to talk a little bit about the Eternals movie and potentially where it might go and, what it might mean for the MCU.
Yeah. So we're going to break this down in a couple different ways. We're going to quickly, I think, go through like, hey, brief history of the Eternals.
Wow. Yeah.
Like the comics, what were they? And then some stuff about the movie that we know, castings and what we think about them and that kind of stuff, characters and their place in it. And then maybe a bit of postulating.
Now we're starting out the big words. Last week you were giving me large for throwing out a few English words.
They weren't big. They were just very English.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty sophisticated word by your standards.
Postulating.
By your standards, mate. Well, so basically, long story short, we don't know a lot about this film.
Yeah.
There is very little come out. So, like Drey from across the pond says, we're just going to chat a little bit about the things that might come up, a little bit about the characters, a bit about the actors. What we'd love to know, though, is like what you guys think is going to happen. So let us know at the podcastassemble@gmail.com. Let us know at Twitter at pod_assemble. I'm going to get there eventually. One of us can do it. We'll get there eventually. pod_assemble. We'll get there. Yeah, let us know what you think. We'd love to know. So go on, Drey. Start us off.
So I guess like the Eternals created in the 70s by Jack Kirby. I don't know, you know a bit more about him, but
he's a legend of the comic industry.
Well, he was DC, I read that, and then he stopped doing DC and came back to Marvel.
So long story short, Jack Kirby was essentially seconded to Stan Lee with everything at Marvel, and he felt underappreciated. He went off and worked for DC for a while. He got some notoriety doing some comics, including The New Gods, which was this big universal expansion and big epic enemies, and then he came back to Marvel and created a very similar thing in the Eternals.
Yeah, they're basically this fictional offshoot race of humans that were created by as a part of the evolutionary process on Earth, but also because of Celestials, which we remember from the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Well, both. So they cropped in both. So they were in the first one, if you remember, when the Collector was explaining to them what the Power Stone was, part of the Infinity Stones. And they cropped up within his
dead Celestial.
They were also in a dead Celestial's head. So they've come up a couple of times. They were also Ego the Living Planet in that respect, which was a Celestial.
Yeah.
And the Celestials essentially did a bunch of experiments on human beings.
Which created two different... The
Eternals. It created a bunch of different stuff.
In the comics, it's the trigger for all... Basically, the trigger. Their experimentation was the trigger for all like powers in humans that happen.
So it didn't necessarily make them eternal. That came later, so we'll touch on that in a moment. But what happened was their experimentation essentially gave humans the ability to get superhuman powers.
Yeah. And it's the basis for a lot of the things that come in the future of Marvel Comics.
And in my research, our research, things that we were looking at, it's really interesting seeing different parts of the Marvel universe that are affected by this. So this experimentation, not necessarily just on humans, but on different races as well, created all kinds of different
Krill.
The krill?
Krill. What is it? What is it called? The krill.
Created
Finding Nemo. What is it? The skrill? What are they?
They created the scrolls.
Scroll.
Oh god! They also created what are often known as the Eternals' sort of enemies, which are the Deviants.
Not a fan of that name.
Terrible name.
I hope they change
Eternals is a bad name as well, though.
Eternals, I don't mind as much.
No, dreadful.
It seems epic. Deviants sounds like some guy was peeing at a park and like he got caught and he's the Deviants. It's very campy and it's like it has a very negative charge to it.
Well, the other thing, and I wanted to mention this before we move on from this, the other thing that was created with these experiments on humans was the X gene, which we know now in the comics has created mutants.
The ability for the mutations.
Well, yeah, it was what created the ability to mutate. Now, interesting that we were talking about WandaVision and all that stuff before and mutant genes and how this is all going to come together at some point. It's going to be so interesting.
In the comics, it's like the progenitor to all that. So like obviously that, with X-Men now being a property they could use, we could totally see that. And also the X-Men come up in the comics as like a crossover with them. The like adversaries. I think it's like the Apocalypse one. There's something that happens.
The Eternals?
Yeah. They like fight them. Then it also comes like Thor comes into play, and there's a new Thor movie coming out, so they have a lot of stuff they could use.
Yeah, well, the Eternals usually, they only had a few issues in the 70s.
Yeah,
so it was like a handful. It was like very few, but then they've been more relevant in like more recent years, and they've teamed up with the Avengers in many forms. So it's really interesting,
And I think they also I read that they got Thanos got retconned as like being an Eternal in some of the older ones. So we'll see.
He is the offspring of an Eternal and a Deviant essentially.
Okay.
So he has the Deviant gene, and that's why he's all purple and weird because the Deviants have these sort of mutations.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. That's really interesting, and a lot of it comes back to that snap. I think so. I think like that. Yeah. All the snaps that went down. Yeah, all the maracas you playing over there.
Am Iron Man. I actually think the "I am inevitable" line is like iconic. Like
so
it's
good.
I don't know. That must be from the comics, but if it's not, it's really well done.
Josh Brolin's made that shit.
I am inevitable.
I loved him in that. So well, the interesting thing, and this one thing I did realize when I was reading up on this was they were actually originally only long-lived. They weren't quite Eternals.
Immortal.
But what happened was essentially their previous leader, Kronos, accidentally unleashed a surge of cosmic energy, which gave them all, infinite lives and heightened their superpowers. But what I found really interesting about that was that sounds a hell of a lot like the origins of the Fantastic Four, who we also know are coming into the movie universe very soon.
Yeah.
They were hit by a cosmic rays when they were in space, and that gave them their superpowers. And I just wonder if there's going to be a lot of looping arcs in all these stories. Of
course there is. It's MCU. This is why they're doing it.
Love it.
Right?
Love the idea. Yeah. Maybe the snap woke the Eternals up from whatever slumber they were in, and maybe it's the same cosmic burst coming back to Earth that hits the Fantastic Four and gives them their power. Who knows?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, how are they gonna how are they gonna start this story? Are the Eternals gonna even remember that they were Eternals, or are they gonna wake up and be and we're gonna get these normal origin stories of people that are just living normal lives? Well, let's get into that a little bit. There's stuff we can talk about in that. What I'd love to talk about a little bit then is just maybe we'll talk about the characters a little bit first, okay? Yeah. If that's all right with you, because I think that one of the characters is really interestingly quite linked to what you just said. Well, so this movie coming out. Oh, so you go. I was just gonna say, before we even get into characters, the idea of the film, Kevin Feige, I always forget his name. Feige. He basically. Making me laugh again while I'm drinking. They basically Marvel really wanted to do this ancient alien trope that you have in sci-fi fantasy where it's aliens populated the earth, and that's why they really wanted to do that. Interesting. And part of it, you'll see that a lot of these characters' names are these kind of mythic heroes or people from like ancient mythos, gods and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I have a feeling part of what they're going to play on is like these people from history that we hear about, like Icarus, like
it's funny.
Kratos. All these
funny you mention that.
were actually these Eternals back in the day before they woke up. Or
funny you mention that because we can talk about this all day. But there's a lot of Greek mythology linked in there, and there's really interesting that a lot of the Eternals through the years of their lives have been mistaken for various gods. So it's really interesting when we go through, and I'll mention a couple when we get there. One thing I'm going to quickly mention before we jump into that, though, is this is really interesting. We sort of mentioned this last week. I mentioned that I was really keen to see the ground level stuff in the MCU again, get that real ground, like that real feeling of being on Earth. Not everyone's fucking hyper powered.
Yeah.
But what apparently I was reading today is that they're splitting it into both the ground level stuff and the cosmic stuff. So you're getting this sort of like, for want of a better thought of a character, you're getting this Daredevil level, sort of like New York gritty stuff, but you're also getting the crazy cosmic stuff, and this is what's pushing that forward.
For sure. Well, these guys, the one thing I'm worried about, these guys all sound so overpowered.
So overpowered.
So like,
one of them even kind of looks like a blonde Superman.
I don't know how they're gonna handle it.
Like, come on.
Yeah, and hopefully the outfits change because the outfits were not that cool looking. I don't think.
No. The updated ones are okay.
Anyway,
well, anyway, this film is supposedly coming out 5th of November, which is definitely not going to happen. Now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know that
it was supposed to come out in February originally.
But I mean, they were all supposed to come out ages ago.
My point is like February. That's like next month.
Oh, I see. Like, but I mean, like Black Widow was supposed to come out a year ago too. So, like,
but I don't even think it finished filming until like late 2020. Anyway, I digress.
Well, anyway, so it's directed by Chloe Zhao, who I don't know a lot about her. I looked her up. She directed a film called Nomad and a film called The Rider that both had incredibly high IMDb scores, but I don't know a huge amount about this. And this film, for me, the most I know about this film is when this film was announced, Kamal Namjani got a lot of shit online for getting ripped, which is crazy thing for the film to be known for.
Wait, he got ripped for being fit for the role.
He got beefed up to be in the role, right? Yeah. You know Kamal Nanjiani.
Yeah, he's the funny. He's going to be the funny guy. He's like a Bollywood actor.
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah,
and it's and there were some very interesting internet reactions, and a lot of people were sort of saying, you know, it's interesting when Henry Cavill beefs up that, oh, you look great, and when a man of color does it, it's, oh, you must be using steroids. It's like, come on, guys.
Well, Henry Cavill's for sure using steroids, let's be honest.
I mean,
there's no way
definitely on the human growth hormone, without a question.
There's no way someone's
without a question.
Homeboy's arms are the size of, like, they're double
both
my
of our
head.
Heads put together. Yeah, literally.
I have a big head. So, like, what? Point being...
You do have a large head.
Point being, you were talking about Chloe Zhao. She basically, approached them for this movie. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
She basically gave a pitch deck to Kevin Feige.
Who cares?
Flair.
At least you know who he is.
Kevin Flair.
Unlike all the different Chris's in Hollywood, you have no idea
Kevin
who they
Flair.
are.
And he basically he was so impressed by what she'd done. They were worried someone else was gonna swoop her up for a big movie contract, and they got her right away.
That's
for her
so
pitch
interesting.
Deck.
I did not hear that.
Her films include like as you said, Nomad Land and Songs of My Brother, a bunch of them. They're all about like marginalized groups for their time.
Interesting.
And funny that like she's executed that so well because this is going to be the first MCU movie with like an openly gay character, potentially a deaf character.
There is a deaf character.
So she seems well equipped to kind of tackle that.
Well, all right, let's jump into the casting because the cast is not only stacked.
That's why I'm excited.
But it is so much there's so much diversity in this. Right, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through them. I'm going to tell you God, there are so many of them. I'm going to tell you the actor. We're then going to quickly touch on the character. And then maybe just a tiny bit about them and their backstory. And you can fill in a lot of blanks. You've done a lot of research on these. So let's start with Salma Hayek's character, Ajak, who is commonly known as the leader of the Eternals. Now, she's obviously known from Dogma, the film Frida, and I just want to throw a funny one in there for the sake of it, the Muppets. Like, she's pretty fucking well known. She's an incredible actress throughout Hollywood.
And Ajak is a character from Greek mythology. It's Odyssey.
Yeah.
I think it was back in the comic book character was actually a guy. I think they switched this one.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, that is a gender swap. So there's actually a lot of gender swapping in here, and I'm so down for that. I think this is a very male stacked team.
Yes.
And I don't think it needs to be.
No, it's better.
And what's interesting is I actually went back and I watched the Comic-Con panel when this was all announced, and Salma Hayek was saying that she brings a lot of like a motherly feel to the to leading the group. I think that's so interesting. It's so different because we've had sort of male leaders throughout the MCU. Captain America, Tony Stark. You know, these are all very macho males.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to have that different dynamic, and being super powerful. It's going to be interesting because we didn't mention before, but all the Eternals essentially have a makeup. So basically, all the Eternals have the same power set, and they all have the ability to sort of focus on one and hype it up. So they all have. Let me go through the super.
I didn't realize that they all have the same powers. I thought they had like special niche ones.
They're basically all Superman, but they all have the ability. They all have the ability to sort of focus on one and improve that area. Me too, but so they can all do. All their cells contain cosmic energy, which means they're capable of flight, teleportation, telepathy, telekinesis, creating illusions, shooting cosmic rays, ability to harness molecules, which means they can regenerate their bodies. They're pretty much just all the superpowers, right? So the problem with that is, from my perspective, is like, what's going to beat that? Like,
also like
eternal as
what differentiates them?
Exactly.
So like, I think
what differentiates them is these niche specialties, like you mentioned.
Like one of them's like a cosmic inventor, and So
do you know Ajax's speciality?
I have it here somewhere.
She can actually communicate with the Celestials.
Yeah, she's like
she's the only one who can do that. Yeah, which is really interesting. So that kind of makes her the leader of the group. So when there's this cosmic level threat that needs dealing with, they go to her and say, I'm just gonna say her because I don't care. Like, she is that character for me now. Like, I don't know enough about the comics. I'm never gonna promise I do know anything about this. So they go to her and she makes a decision whether to wake up and commune with the Eternals, which I love that idea. What do you think?
No, I think that having these specialties actually be something that drives the story and gives these people agency is what they need to do. Otherwise, it will be really boring.
I do think they'll tone it back though, big time.
They need to, and also like they need to make it more about like what each character represents. And I think they plan. Agreed. I don't think they'll mess this up, man, because they got so many good people to sign on. How would you get them to sign on? Oh. It couldn't have just been on the MCU's like clout alone. I mean, maybe, but.
Well, that was a really interesting point that actually came from that podcast I was talking about before. Like you don't sign all these people. Like, I'm just going to quickly rattle off some names: Salma Hayek, Richard Madden, Angelina Jolie, Gemma Chan, Camille Nanjiani,
Kit Harington.
Kit Harington, not actually an Eternal. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like Dong Lee, you don't sign these people to 1 year to one picture deals. So the Eternals must be big in their plans, right?
No,
sure.
So that was what like my takeaways from this were, I have them like listed. Because they kind of said as much. They did it at some point. This gives them a big, diverse set of characters to cast, introduce, and start gardening a big, huge story with, right?
Okay.
So they've already basically said that this is going to be one of the foundational layers of like the new phase.
Interesting. All right, okay, so tell me about then Robb Stark's character. He's going to be Robb Stark for the rest of the time. That's all he is. So Richard Madden, obviously known for Game of Thrones and The Bodyguard. I'm sure you've seen The Bodyguard, right?
Yes, it's good.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. It's good.
It's really weird hearing him with his actual Scottish accent.
I heard it before, so I was prepared.
Right. I wasn't prepared.
I had seen him in interviews and stuff, and so I was prepared,
Yeah, so actually that was a recommendation from my mum, which I'm, she's got great taste in TV. She was like, you should watch this. And I was like, okay.
I just heard it just went viral.
When
it came out, everyone watched it.
See, that was while I was away traveling. That was while I was in South America, so I didn't actually pick up on any of the hype. And then I came back and mum was like, you have to watch this. I was like, okay. But
so he is basically their like tactical, like he's basically Robb Stark of the Eternals. He's like a really good tactical leader. He can fly. He can project cosmic energy beams from his eyes, superhuman strength, all the normal stuff. Obviously, like his name kind of originates or is like tied to Icarus, the legend. But the backstory of the comics is it's actually like his son is Icarus, and because his son he actually falls in love and has sexual relations with a human. And
can you do that one more time?
Sexual
actually, can you say main topic theme, but in that exact tone?
I don't think I can do that. It's gotta be.
Sorry, God, I'm getting off topic.
Yeah. Anyway, he falls in love with a human, and when they have kids, it's always not an Eternal; it's a normal human. So he has a kid who ends up being Icarus. He loves seeing his dad fly around. Sees his dad leave. He builds him this metal thing in ancient Greece, I think. And the kid's flying around, sees his dad goes to fight the Deviants at some point. Mm-hmm. He tries to fly and help him and actually dies, and that's the story of Icarus. Like that's part of the backstory.
Right, because obviously the Icarus in the Greek mythology is that he has
Flies too
the
close to the
wings.
sun,
Yeah, okay. Well, interesting. It's interesting because he's essentially seen as the second strongest of the Eternals after Gilgamesh.
Played by my favorite South Korean actor. This guy is so good.
Let's jump to Gilgamesh. Talk to me about Gilgamesh.
So I don't actually have a ton of notes on Gilgamesh other than that he's apparently the strongest dude.
He is,
which makes sense because this guy is a unit. The guy they cast.
Massive.
What's his name? Don Lee?
Don Lee or Don Suk Ma?
Anyway, I've seen him in like two things, but one thing is the most memorable. Memorable?
Memorable.
I can't speak. Train to Busan.
I was going to say exactly that. So I haven't, but I've seen like clips of it and it was unreal.
In my queue for like eons. And it's just a really good zombie flick. It's like a zombie flick. Is it a Japanese zombie flick? I'm not sure.
I love Korean.
Anyway, he plays such a homie in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out. So that character, Gilgamesh, is known for being the most proactive in helping humans out in times of strife. Okay, cool. So we're not going very quickly through
halfway.
These. Well, let me tell you one other thing really quickly about Richard Madden's character before we move on.
Yep.
We're just going to call him Robb Stark. He's not Icarus. He's Robb Stark.
Robb Stark. The king of the North.
He has this special ability, which he can link the minds of Eternals. The more, the better. Apparently, this thing called the Unimind. And they basically become like a Megazord. They basically become this higher
like
creature.
Wonder Twin powers activate?
Yeah, it's it's crazy.
Power Rangers, and they all join together and become the big
Apparently
thing.
they all join together and become like a bigger being, which is so interesting. The more of them, the better. The more stable this Unimind becomes. I find that so. I know that could be. I mean, he could easily be like a gateway character into this movie.
I was gonna say that'll be either really cheesy or really cool because like there's apparently different factions of Eternals. Some that are like fuck the humans.
Look, man, like
some that are so it could. There's a lot they could play with.
So much of this to dive into. I feel like we should probably maybe not go too deep onto it. Otherwise, we might be here forever. I think the next character to speak about then is obviously Angelina Jolie, who we all know from her really well known films Wanted, Kung Fu Panda, Kung Fu Panda 2.
She's in everything.
And that one episode of Entourage.
She's in Entourage?
She's in the Cans episode.
I don't remember that. I can't believe they got her for that. She's like
a flash in the pan.
She's like a pretty
I just thought I'd find the worst film she's possibly been in.
I can tell what you were doing there.
Yeah.
You forgot that one where it's like with Johnny Depp and in Paris.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
No, that's a good movie. Johnny Depp.
Oh, Johnny Depp, sorry.
The Tourist. Terrible movie. Anyway.
So she is Thena.
Yeah, like she hasn't been in anything good in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thena, the character?
No, yeah.
Talking about Thena, who cares about
it? My point is like I'm worried about this, but whatever. Really? I hope she does well. I hope she doesn't. I just like don't. I'm not like a huge fan of Angelina Jolie.
Sure.
So I'm just like
you can say that. No one's gonna be upset by that.
You know, I'm just like But Thena she's a fierce warrior. She's like can form any weapon. Kind of like a lot of the Eternals reminds me of. That book I was talking about, Stormlight Archer, that I read, that big tome a few months back.
Big old
it's about like these ancient things that like, and they're alive forever, but they go like mad because they've been alive so long, but they can like form weapons out of anything. It's very similar to this. I wonder if he was, just a side note, I wonder if he was influenced by it. But she's one of the high up ones, and she's like, isn't she wed to Gilgamesh or something?
You know what? I don't know.
Yeah, she's she partners with Gilgamesh.
That's cool.
At some point in the comics. Like they little love affair.
All right.
Sexual relations.
All right. So Gemma Chan. Okay, Crazy Rich Asians. She's in Transformers the last night. Yeah, not a huge amount is known about her. She plays Cersei.
Another Cersei in the fantasy realm.
She can transform. Well, yeah.
Cersei.
She's in a film that's full of Game of Thrones characters, and she's actually called Cersei.
Yeah.
So yeah, all I really know about her is she can transform at will. Is there anything more exciting about
loves
Cersei?
Icarus.
Right. Okay.
I like actually what I liked about like learning this stuff is like these people's normal jobs. So she's like not only is she an Eternal, she's also a museum curator.
Oh, beautiful! Just like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, she spends her time curating museums,
just like Wonder Woman.
She
enjoys long walks on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. What is the other one? There was another one that I found. Like not all of them talked about their jobs, but museum curator was one. Anyway.
Okay, so let's then switch on then. So Kamal Nanjiani, who I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong, and I apologize to anyone who cares.
Dude, he's an actor. So
we all know what he's been in. Yeah, he did that one episode of Archer. He's been in other comedy stuff.
He's been in Silicon Valley. He's
I'm kidding.
ace
He's
in that.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen The Big Sick?
Yes, great movie. I told you to watch that.
I actually really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, I told you to watch that one, didn't I? Or maybe I'm mistaking you for some.
I think you're mistaken me.
Anyway, it's a good one. It's a great movie. That's really about it. That's about his like real life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's like most of it's about like something he experienced.
How interesting. So he was dating an Uber driver.
Was she an Uber driver?
He was the Uber driver. Yeah, that was it.
And and a chick he was dating did get sick. Yeah, I don't know if it's like his wife or if he's single now, but it's
he's jacked, is what he is. He's absolutely.
I haven't seen these pictures, so I need to look it up. But I'm actually, based off of his character description, I'm so excited for him in this role because he just plays like kind of that like aristocratic rich douche so well.
Yeah.
I've seen him do it in like these little skits about tech. Okay. He does a lot of them.
Well, we'll tweet a picture of him, like what he was before and what he looks like afterwards on at pod_assemble after the pod. So
but his role is like some guy who becomes kind of full of himself. Like his job as a normal human is he becomes this big Bollywood actor. Yes. Well, it's gonna be fucking phenomenal.
Well, he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be Bollywood in this movie, but in the original comic books, he was obviously of Japanese. He was in the Japanese cinema.
I was more so talking about what they've announced for the actual movie.
Yeah, of course.
He's gonna play a Bollywood actor.
So they're probably gonna make that like interesting little origin. That's so.
It'll be so funny as
so
that, dude.
He's like an action star in it as well.
Yeah, and he's gonna be just like super over the top because it's Bollywood.
Kingo Sunan, that's the character name. So. Yeah. I think he's gonna be great. I think he could be the comedy relief for this.
Yeah, stoked on this casting.
Yeah, he's gonna be bloody brilliant. Okay, so the next one that I literally know nothing about is Barry Keoghan.
Yeah, some of these like I just don't want to talk too much about.
Well, let's not talk about him, but I just think it's interesting.
Which one is he?
Cast because he was in. Listen to these. This is for a 3-piece on your CV. He was in Chernobyl. He was in Dunkirk, and he was in Rebellion.
Yeah, this guy. No, so he's apparently like the aloof guy, like the like a stoner of the group. Pull that off. Yeah, he's definitely pull that just
off.
Look at his face. I'm like, are you all there, dude? Like,
yeah, well,
no, I couldn't remember where I saw him from, but it must have been Dunkirk.
I think it was probably Dunkirk. Yeah. All right, well, let's move on pretty quick then. So, Leah McHugh. Okay, so she plays Sprite. Now that's really interesting because her character is a child character, but is an Eternal who is seen as a child.
Think 11
and never ages.
No, 11, not 11. 13 from Umbrella Academy.
Okay, yeah.
What's his name? 7, 5. It's 5.
Pick a goddamn number, man.
That's the thing 11. These days. 11, 13, but they call him 5.
Look, so she's called Sprite, right? And it's interesting you mentioned before what you're talking about before because because she doesn't age, she's obviously got like the quite childish like outlook on certain things, and she likes to play pranks in the other Eternals. Now, one thing she does do in one of the comics is she tricks them all into believing that they are just normal humans and they'll forget their past as Eternals. So could that be a way of them being in the background and not realizing?
Pretty good prank.
Yeah.
Pretty phenomenally
Pretty messed
off.
up prank, right? And then Icarus, who we all know is Rob Stark, has to go find them all and convince them that they're Eternals.
So that's what I was like. When we get into the plot, like let's really get into it because there's a bunch of theories about. Like I got a bunch of theories on that.
Okay, well I think that's a really interesting one that you mentioned that before, and that's could be where it's going. Okay, so you mentioned before Lauren Ridloff. Sorry, I'm so butchering names today. My apologies.
Yeah.
Lauren Ridloff, who is a deaf. My phone autocorrected that to dead.
Makari.
A dead actress previously on The Walking Dead. God, I'm autocorrecting myself. A deaf actress previously on The Walking Dead, which is Makari. Yeah, what do you know about her? Other than she's a gender
zombie.
Yeah, I know. She's literally a zombie.
She's super fast, man.
Yeah,
so she's Planet Scouts. She's like the scouter. So she's probably going out there scouting for other enemies. The new Thanos, you know.
And the character in the comics, obviously, a dude dressed in red, was regularly mistaken for Hermes from mythology, which is real super
Makes
interesting.
Sense. Yeah.
So Brian Tyree Henry, known for Godzilla, he's in the Joker, he's in Atlanta, he
plays the dad in the Spider-Verse.
Awesome. Yeah, he does the voice for the dad in the Spider-Verse. He is Fastos, who's a genius. Tell me about Fastos. What do you know?
He is an intelligent cosmic powered inventor.
Yeah, he's a cosmetic.
He's a cosmetic. He does nails, lips, and eyes. He's helped progress humanity technologically behind the scenes. So that's gonna be interesting. Like he's obviously like influenced humanity's development of technology through the years.
Yeah, it's super interesting. He's like a weaponsmith, right? So he can create these incredible weapons, but he's also non-violent. So he's passive. He doesn't want to be involved in violence, and he sort of has this mysterious like depression about violence that he refuses to like go into, which is kind of like a lingering thing for him through the comics, which I find really super interesting. Hope they're going to sort of dive into. But for the main cast of the Eternals, like we've kind of
is the main cast?
That is the Eternals.
That's my point, though. Like, we'll get into it with general thoughts.
Well, I think it's going to be a double fold, right? So I think Robb Stark is going to be he's going to be the focal point of the endpoint of the Eternals, who we sort of like focus on and follow through. But I think the person who is going to be the story could focus around potentially, even though he isn't Eternal, is Kit Harington's character, which is Dean Whitman, which is Black Knight.
Is it Dean Whitman? I have Dana Whitman. That's funny.
Dane Whitman.
I
said Dane. I obviously mean Dane.
Dana.
We both all corrected the wrong thing, but I know it's Dane Whitman.
This guy seriously ends Game of Thrones and then takes a role as the Black Knight.
Unreal.
I actually find it really funny that they like haven't named him the Black Knight. I wonder if they're just gonna get rid of that because they don't want to associate him with Game of Thrones.
Well, the Black Knight mantle is actually passed down to him. Yeah. It's
a part of the story. Yeah,
it's a genealogy thing, which is really interesting, and he has a connection. And I've completely forgotten to which one, to one of the Eternals. He has a love interest with. Let me just remember quickly.
Yeah, I think I have it somewhere as well. No, I actually have just notes about how his history like goes back to like King Arthur and the English, that whole lore.
He has a connection with Gemma Chan's character, which is obviously Cersei. So they have a bit of a love tryst, if I remember correctly.
That's a bit weird.
So interesting, Jon Snow's having a love tryst with Cersei. There you go. All of your wet dreams coming true all at once.
Well, his character is the most intriguing to me because he's like kind of normal and also has this like cursed sword, which like as he uses it drains his soul. I'm like, this guy's gonna be another brooding Jon Snow. It's honestly, like the perfect cast.
You could dive into this for hours. It's super interesting. The Dana. Which Whitman are we talking about? I think that's going to be an interesting like outward looking in point to the group. Do you know what I mean? Like It's I don't know how that could be.
I feel like he could also be like that double agent kind of guy where they're not sure if he's good, not sure if he's bad. I think I read that there was a couple storylines like the way he proved himself for the Avengers was like infiltrating the enemy.
Yes.
So they could they could totally use that like divisions within the Eternals. We'll see.
So which of these characters are you most excited to see on screen? Like,
I'm just so excited to see Jon Snow and Robb Stark finally get reunited. I am so excited, bro. Next time I see you, you'll be all in black. Nope. Next time you see him,
I would pay good money. I would pay good money for them not to ever be on screen together.
Oh, I'd cry. I'd weep, bro. I'd be so sad. To see that. But they must be so jacked to like be a part of a series again together. You know, all those good times on Game of Thrones.
I'm gonna agree with you though. I think
and then obviously Kumail.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think Don Lee for me. You mentioned before Train for Busan. He's like a giant. Like I'm so interested to see what they do with that character because that one to me is just sounds real interesting. It's like he likes helping the human race, but why hasn't he been helping the human race? Like,
and maybe he was the one that created nuclear bombs, and he's like, oh, some guilt for that. Yeah, there's all sorts of things you could do with that.
Such an interesting, I'm interested.
Or sorry, I was thinking about the other guy, the guy who's the inventor, but. Dude, the crazy part about this is just there's such a good cast that I want to see all of them, and I'm like, how do you create a movie in 2.5 hours?
Well, they did it with Endgame.
Well, so that was my first thought, but then I actually thought about it more, and I was like, but did they? Because Endgame was more the culmination of like 50 other origin story movies. You're gonna have to create an origin story movie with like 10 characters at the start.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a different.
That's always been a bit of a problem for me with older comic book movies when they try and fit in too many origins and too many enemies and too many.
It's just like I can't. Like, this feels like it should be a trilogy on its own.
Could be.
You know.
Yeah. Who knows? Well, we haven't really talked about the Deviants yet
at all.
But they're obviously part of the sort of
the antithesis.
The bad guy. Yeah.
Antithesis of
they really are. They're the bad guys. What do you know about them?
They were created kind of as a part of the Celestial. We talked about it a bit earlier. Like, I don't actually have a ton on them other than the fact that they're like, just fated to be the arch enemies of the Eternals.
Yes.
And there's a lot of battles that actually shun them different places in the comics. And sometimes the guys that were shunned become like actual other villains being with more mutations. I don't have a ton on them, to be honest.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of interesting thoughts around this and stuff I've been reading in general and sort of my own thoughts. I went down the route of thinking like these are sort of like quite a generic villainous race.
Just peeing all over parks where they shouldn't be. Just
drinking on the sidewalk,
whipping out there
God,
where they shouldn't. It's all bad.
But if you think about it, if you think about the MCU's history of characters like this, where they take like a pretty classic, either generic bad guy or whatever it is, and make it something a little different. So my example here is Captain Marvel and the Skrulls, or what do you call them, the Krills?
The Krill.
Captain Marvel and the Skrulls. Like in the comics, they're just essentially the bad guys. Whereas in that, they made them this race trying to find a home, and they were actually real sympathetic, and they changed the whole like angle you look at them from, and they actually flipped it. So it was the Scree Krull, like it flipped it so that the Krull were. I can't even say
Skrull,
it.
The Skrull.
You've killed me. The Skrull and the
Krill.
Kree. The Kree were actually the bad guys, where in the comics they're sort of like the good guys trying to fight off the Skrulls. I wonder if these are going to be being used by a higher power.
You would hope that they're not only being used, but it's almost like they're being like, because of how they're created, they're flawed.
Yeah,
and they're being abused.
Yeah, maybe.
Like they're not even being used; they're like being abused, and they can't. It's almost like because of their genetics, they're predisposed to like be generically flawed, and I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of things they could do, man. And I'm actually like pretty excited that they'll make all the right changes, because they seem to always do that.
They just have such good writers at Marvel.
Yeah,
like it's incredible. Okay, so we mentioned about Thanos being the son of eternal parents.
And that's why I think that's what led me down that path of like maybe they'll be flawed, because Thanos had like good aims. His intentions were good, but he had this like,
well, they were in the first place.
Desired, but then they kind of fucked that.
Did you read that? There's a really interesting like flip on the Thanos sensibilities, right? So like he has this ultimate weapon that can do anything, right? And he chooses to kill half the life in the universe rather than just snap his fingers and create more of the stuff we need, the supplies and to keep us going, rather than.
I think that the argument,
or just give us an infinite amount of stuff.
The argument there, like, and you can't be like, oh, you can't do that because it's literally called the Infinity Stone or the Infinity Gauntlet. So he obviously can create things for infinite amounts of things. Anyway.
Yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
you would assume.
It's a magic genie
suspend
wish.
your disbelief there. But I think
but the point of that, the point of that is that he is actually just a psychopath, and he is justifying his actions, sugarcoating them to make it seem like he's doing it for the good of the universe, when really he's just an absolute.
And maybe that's part like of why he's so flawed, is because he is a deviant at heart.
He is, and that is a big part of it. Yeah, exactly. Well, what are your then theories then for this movie? Tell me your eternal theories. Things that'll last a lifetime.
So we talked about we could do this forever. We talked about how they could start, like, I think you're right. They will start it with, like, them coming out of some kind of sleep, or maybe being awakened by some kind of tragedy.
Yeah.
AKA the destruction of an Infinity Stone via vision.
Or a snap.
That cosmically rejigs the universe. And I do think a big part of the first one will be him, Richard Madden trying to get the team back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's going to be the A-team is what you're saying.
Yeah. It will be. Yeah.
It's going to be that episode of Rick and Morty where they do a heist.
Yeah. Oh, that one's great. The heist. Heist.
We should do an episode of Rick and Morty at some point.
Yeah, we will. So I think that there's that. I think that also it could be like a trigger for the X-Men, as we've already talked about.
I was going to be my final question. Do you think this is going to be like I'm not sure this is going to be a trigger for the X-Men, but I think this is going to lay the groundwork for us
for the next phase.
Yeah, 100%.
They're saying this is how it was started, and Gene X was one. I think that is pretty obvious that they'll do that.
I'm excited to see how that goes, personally. I think that's really interesting.
I also was interested to see how, like, the Secret Invasion storyline, that thing that you're reading, is, how will that play into it? Because this is like another group of it. There's a show coming out, right? This is another group of individuals who are, I don't know the timelines, but who are just like pretending to be humans. Could they make a play on words there?
These have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Well, thousands
of
years.
No, of course. But
it's interesting.
They're going to come out of hiding.
They're very tight-lipped about that show, and I think what they're trying to do is make people not get their expectations too high, that it's going to be some... Because in the comic, the one I'm reading at the moment, it's a big, massive Avengers crossover with all your favorite Avengers fighting all your favorite Avengers, mano a mano, basically.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is play that down. So
they don't want
make you not think this is how we bring back Chris Evans. Or Pine, whichever one it is, you don't know.
Yeah.
They don't want it to be that. Even though that could be a great way to bring him back. Like, imagine he's been a Skrull the whole time. Or they bring in Skrull Captain America and nobody knows. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So I think they're trying to move away from that, and they want that show. I think. I mean, it's going to play to Samuel Jackson, who's late 60s, 70s now. Yeah. It's going to have to be a more low key thriller almost.
For sure. It's almost like if they play on that thing of like people coming out of hiding and pretending to be humans. It's kind of like doubling down on that.
I see it the other way though. I see it almost like the Superman thing. They're like ripping their shirts off to be the super, you know what I mean? Going into telephone booths.
No, they definitely serve different purposes. It's more just like a similar kind of like, hey, people are we thought they're humans, but they're not. Or we thought, anyway.
Could they go the route of like a Hancock, for example? You know how? So if you remember at the end of Hancock, which is why do I remember this? At the end of Hancock, what they do is the two superpowered beings, which is Hancock and the girl I've completely forgotten, the female character. When they get together, terrible things happen because their love's so passionate it essentially destroys all around them.
Yeah.
Could it be that they're so concerned being around each other that they might have a falling out? Yeah. They might break something that they've actively force themselves to forget their powers and they have to come back for some big threat.
I think that's also a great way you could do it. I hope they explore like what it's like to like be alive for thousands of years. That would seriously change someone as well. Like some people would become pretty maniacal, and I'm assuming that that's probably one of like the offshoots of them because there's a civil war in the comics at one point.
Yes.
So I could see that happening as well.
Well, going back to your comments last week about Highlander. The interesting thing about being an eternal life force is that at some point you see all the people around you wither and die. Like that's what Captain America's biggest seen flaw, that all his friends and family would eventually die around him.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a completely different spin when all the people you're closest to and around you will also live forever.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How do you how does that mentally change you?
Saturday for the boys.
It's a lot of fucking Saturdays.
You stick to the tried and true principles. No, I'm stoked to see it, man. There's what was one of the other theories you were throwing out there? We didn't touch on all of them.
Well, the final one was, from my perspective, could this be the way that they introduced the Fantastic Four, or a means to them introducing Fantastic Four? They would have to do. I mean, we were already seeing backstories and backstories and backstories and backstories.
I don't know how you do it.
The way they become eternal, like infinite beings, is by this big cosmic explosion that one of them causes. Could there be like a post-credit scene where you see that flying through space and then coming back towards Earth, that cosmic explosion, and then it comes back towards Earth, and you just see a rocket ship going towards it. So you know what I mean? Like,
and it's like that classic Fantastic Four.
Yeah, like I would love to see that, and I mean they're not gonna. It's too soon.
Yeah,
but I would love that to be a thing.
So what do you think the black? Like, what I'm curious, how do they integrate the black? They got this whole Eternal thing going. How do they integrate the Black Knight story, which is kind of its own thing?
You're really exposing me here because that's the one thing I didn't want to talk about.
Okay, sorry.
That's not enough I just have no idea how that's going to fit in.
It's just like
none.
Because it's like this
love interest,
but he is integrated into it, right? In general, or is that not even the case in the comics? It's his own thing in the comics, isn't it?
He's his own dude.
Yeah, that's weird that they would put these two things together when they already have 10 characters. Obviously, he has a love interest with, I think it's Cersei. I think I mentioned before. They have. Could it be that there's some big infight between them, between the Eternals themselves, that Eternals shouldn't fall for, humans, people who aren't, and that's why they go their separate ways. Could be any of these things. There's so much backstory for the Black Knight in the comics. Him and Cersei go off and do all their cosmic stuff on their own for a while. It's too much. There's too much. I think this one also could tie into Thor's movie.
How so?
Just because it's like the mythos thing, right? They're all gods in history, and then you've got literally an actual god in Thor who's taking a back seat, and they're kind of coming in to help. Also in the comics, they cross over a bit. They do hang out, but I think Thor gets his like memory erased or something weird. Anyway.
Well, our question for our delightful listeners is, do you think the Eternals are overpowered? Let us know at the podcast assemble at gmail.com or pod_assemble on Twitter. We would love to know. I'd love to know what you think about this and what you think where it's going to go, what's going to go down, whether Robb Stark's finally going to meet Jon Snow again, whether they're going to be off screen forever. We'd love to know what you guys think. So thank you, friend of the show, Steve, for... Well, this is nicely wrapping up with our communications this week because this was your
request. Yeah,
he requested us to
Hopefully
talk about the
did it
Eternals.
justice. There's a lot more we could talk about.
There's so much more we could talk about. What we thought, we hope we covered off at least some of the key points.
Yeah, for sure.
I literally don't know how much more we could talk about because there's so little known about this movie. A little bit's been given away apparently on the back of some toy releases. This is how people find out everything about movies nowadays. Funny. So like
things in the PlayStation Store they hack a toy release description.
100%. I've tried to steer clear of that as much as possible personally, but I'm sure you can find online if you want to know more about certain bits of the movies, etc. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah. We really appreciate it. Drey, we've mentioned it 8 times, but where can they find us?
pod_assemble
on Twitter. Yeah,
on
amazing.
Twitter, and thepodcastassemble@gmail.com.
You know what? Mate. I have to edit you out doing that 18 times every week. That's amazing.
That's saved you some time, man.
Anyway. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, guys. We really appreciate it. That was quite a long one this week. So, cheers for sticking around, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.